on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. It's been kind of a slow week in bodybuilding now that the 2024 season is wrapped up. But we've got some stuff to talk about today, the first being the latest physique update from Nick Walker. I would think that going into 2025, one of the biggest things to look forward to is the return of Nick Walker. After missing back-to-back Olympias and parting ways with his coach Matt Jansen, Nick Walker recently seems to have been posting more physique updates than usual now that he's got his new coach, and today was no exception to that, posting a front double bicep and a side chest. The front double bicep, in this picture, it looks like he's hitting it a little bit differently than he typically does. And I think that now when we get physique updates from Nick, the main two things that I'm looking at are his midsection and his legs. You can't really see his legs that well in this update, but his midsection you can. And I actually thought his midsection looks pretty good in this update. And the reason I say I'm looking at his midsection, obviously that was something that a lot of people talked about at not only the New York Pro appearance, but the Pittsburgh Pro guest posing. He seemed to be letting the midsection go a little bit, but I think it looks pretty good here. And I think obviously the reason we would be looking at his legs is the hamstring injury, and then also the quads was a main point of criticism when we saw him at the Arnold Classic against Samson Dauda, which is something that I'm hoping we're going to be able to see again this year. To me, it looks like it's possible that Nick is beginning a prep in these updates. He doesn't look like super crazy deep into the offseason in these updates. And we're a little bit under now, 12 weeks out from the 2025 Arnold Classic, which we know Samson is doing. And I would love to see a Nick and Samson rematch, especially considering the fact that we didn't get to see Nick at the Olympia. And like I said before, I personally want to see, and I think a lot of the fans want to see this too, they want to see Nick Walker go up against some top guys in whatever show that he does in this kind of comeback journey of his. Not just win a show, qualify for the Olympia, but compete against some high-level guys to really put his name back in that conversation. And I think the Arnold would be a prime show for that, even though I do think Samson is going to win the Arnold, even if Nick's top two at the Arnold, a top two comparison of him and Samson, and then him going on maybe doing another show to actually get the qualification and win and go to the Olympia. I think that's the kind of upward momentum that Nick could utilize in this comeback. Whether or not he'll do that remains to be seen, but to me, in these updates, it looks like he could be 12 weeks out from a show like the Arnold. It doesn't look like he's just off-season mode here. I mean, conditioning-wise, he looks like he might even be a little bit ahead of some of the updates that we've seen of Samson. And we know for a fact that Samson is doing the Arnold. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you expect to see from Nick in the 2025 season? Do you expect to see him do a super packed lineup like the Arnold Classic? Do you expect to see him do another New York Pro? You've also got this new show on the horizon now that the Pittsburgh Pro has open bodybuilding, which is something they just added for 2025. It seems like there's going to be a lot of big names doing the Pittsburgh show. Maybe that's a good show for Nick to do. And do you expect Nick to actually compete in the 2025 Mr. Olympia? Because like I said, the two back-to-back Olympias that he missed, it seems like that would be the bigger question for 2025 is will we actually see him on the Olympia stage or not? I don't think the question is will he be able to qualify. I think the question is will he actually be there? I personally don't think Nick would miss 3 Olympias consecutively. I think he will qualify. I think he'll be at the Olympia. And then I think the even bigger question beyond that is will he be able to be a top 3 guy at the Olympia again? And I think you even got to look at the Nick and Martin Fitzwater rivalry that we saw at the New York Pro. And I think another question beyond that would be, will Martin place above Nick at the Olympia? Or potentially if they compete at the same show going into the Olympia, is Martin now a better bodybuilder than Nick? Because Martin's now a top 4 Olympian. He's now one of very few people to ever defeat Chris Bumstead, even though it was in open bodybuilding. Martin's kind of on fire right now, and he seems to be the next big thing. So what I would like to see, not only a Nick and Samson rematch, but a Nick and Martin rematch, and see if things are different this time around now that Martin's got so much upward momentum. Does Nick still have that potential to be the next big thing, the next young guy to win the Olympia, win a big show, or is Martin ahead of him now? I think is a good question to ask. And honestly, I would say that Martin is. And speaking of Martin, I saw recently not only this update of Michael KRIZO post his pretty invasive shoulder surgery, but Michael KRIZO also recently did an interview about the Prague Pro and about Martin defeating Chris Bumstead, saying that it seemed like he wasn't super impressed by Chris in Open, but he was impressed by Martin. And he said that he doesn't really see Chris as an open bodybuilder. He said, I wasn't there for either the semifinals or the finals, and I didn't see it live. And he watched the live stream from his hotel room, but he also says he thought that Martin deserved to win, and he thought that open is open, and Martin should always beat Chris when open is open. And he says even though many people disagreed that Martin should have won, and many people wish that Chris would win and qualify for the Open Olympia, he says he doesn't see Chris Bumstead as an open bodybuilder, and he also says that as long as he wasn't first, it's fine. And he says if he was there, he thinks that Chris would have finished third. He wouldn't have even been top 2. So I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about for 2025 is the KRIZO comeback as well. KRIZO missed a pretty good chunk of the 2024 competitive season because of that shoulder injury and then the rehab that followed. But KRIZO was a pretty big factor in open bodybuilding when he was competing. He was a top Olympian. He was winning shows. And now he's kind of out of that conversation. So this is kind of the latest update of what his physique is looking like post-shoulder surgery. And then I saw those comments about the Prague Pro where he says he would have placed ahead of Chris Bumstead. So as this 2025 season rapidly approaches, I'm thinking about where does KRIZO fit in with this group of guys, especially these newer guys like Martin Fitzwater. It looks like we're going to see a lot of good Vito this year. When will we see KRIZO? How will he do? And then even talking about a guy like Neckzilla. So for the next story, we did get a series of physique updates from Neckzilla where he appears to be pretty deep into his offseason. And I think the undeniable fact about Neckzilla is he is a freak. When we see updates like this, just the size of him, he's a monster. He's a guy that gets people excited about going to a show when he's competing. And I see these updates, and I'm impressed. He looks crazy. He's definitely one of the bigger guys in the IFBB right now. But the problem that seems to just keep recurring with Neckzilla is he commits to shows and doesn't compete. So we don't ever really know when we're going to see him on stage. And the latest example of that was Prague. He had said going into Prague he was going to do that show. He was there at Prague just as a spectator, though. And then there's been so many other shows throughout 2025 that he said he was going to do and then didn't do. I can't even remember all of them. And maybe he does get an invitation to the Arnold again. But again, that was one of the shows that he blew off last year, so I'd be surprised if they invited him again. But maybe he gets one and maybe he actually competes. And the thing is, I want to see Neckzilla do well. He's a freak. He's a mass monster. He's got a crazy physique. He's an exciting competitor like Big Ramy was when Ramy was competing. So I think him doing more shows and him doing well is something that every bodybuilding fan should want to see. And that's why I'm so disappointed by the fact that he blows off all these shows, is because he's kind of becoming a guy that's known for inconsistency and being an unreliable competitor. And for example, even seeing him at the Dubai Pro, and he was able to take a top 4 spot where conditioning-wise, he looked almost like he was in an off-season condition at that show. But you've also got to consider there were still like 20 other bodybuilders that placed behind him in Dubai. So to be able to place top 4 in that kind of condition amongst guys like Nathan Diasha, Behruz Tabani, William Bonac, it's actually still very impressive. It just shows how crazy his physique really is. So if you imagine looking at these updates, a shredded version of Neckzilla, it would be a force to be reckoned with, and I want to see that. I just don't know when and if we ever will. And when he posted these updates, he didn't say what show he's doing or planning on doing to start off the 2025 season. But even if he had said the show, it's like, how much can we really depend on his word to even know that he's actually going to do that show? And I'm kind of curious as well to see how a physique like that is going to do at the Olympia. I want to see him qualify and go to the O, because now that Samson has won and Derek won last year, it seems like the standard for an open Mr. Olympia is trending in a much more aesthetically pleasing direction. So I'm curious to see how a mass monster like Neckzilla that doesn't have the prettiest physique, he doesn't have the best flow, aesthetic is definitely not a word that I would use to describe him. I would like to see how he places in a lineup like that. Because every single guy in the top 3 at the Olympia this year, even Derek and Hadi, Samson as well, all 3 of them can pull a vacuum pose. And even extending to the top 4 or 5, Martin Fitzwater can pull a vacuum pose. Andrew Jacked is extremely aesthetic. And Samson is a big guy, but if you look at the top guys at the Olympia, they're all pretty aesthetically pleasing guys for open bodybuilders. So I kind of wonder if we're entering a new era of bodybuilding, not just in the sense of a new Mr. Olympia champ, but it seems like the guys that are placing the best at the Olympia are not the mass monster guys. They're guys that are aesthetically pleasing. And maybe that is a side effect of the popularity of classic physique, but I would be interested to see how a guy like Neckzilla with just crazy size in peak condition, if he's in his all-time best shape ever, would he crack the top 6 at the Olympia? Because another guy that I've been talking about that we just got an update from a few days ago, we got a new update from him today, Carlos Thomas Jr., another guy that I think has the potential to be one of the next young up-and-coming stars of bodybuilding. When you talk about proportions, he's got really good size. His legs are crazy. We know that Neckzilla has crazy legs. Carlos does too, but with that crazy size, he's got really crazy proportions. And I think this is the type of physique that bodybuilding seems to be trending towards, is the crazy small waist like Carlos has. Carlos can pull a vacuum pose. He's got big legs. He's got really big arms, shoulders, chest. It's kind of conditioning that he struggles with. And that could be a part of the stomach issues that could be caused by the stomach issues that he's had in the past, which has been his reason for pulling out of some shows in the past year. But we've got some really crazy talent in bodybuilding right now. I mean, you look at this pose. It's just a standard front relaxed. He's not even posing in this update. And it's just an insane physique. Round, full, a ton of size. He is a shorter guy, so bear that in mind. It's a smaller frame, but a ton of size, round, full, 3D. But aesthetic, small waist. He's like pulling a vacuum in the front relaxed. This is the type of physique that seems to be doing really well in bodybuilding right now. And really his only struggle has been conditioning up until this point. I just think 2025 is going to be a really exciting year. You've got a lot of young guys. Nick Walker making his comeback, Carlos Thomas Jr. making his comeback again. I believe it's the Detroit Pro is the only show that I've heard of him doing so far. Maybe he'll do shows like Pittsburgh as well. Good Vito is going to be doing a bunch of shows. Martin's going to be doing a bunch of shows. Michael KRIZO at some point in 2025 is making his comeback. And I think there's also a lot of interest in seeing who the new coach for Derek and Hadi is going to be. And it could be 2 different coaches now that Hani Rambod has retired. And if you pivot over to Classic Physique, I saw these updates from Mike Sommerfeld, a.k.a. Mike the Badass, who was the guy that was runner-up to Chris Bumstead at the Olympia this year. And actually, very impressively, had a vote for first place. He wasn't unanimously in second. And I think this is going to be an interesting thing to follow in Classic Physique, because not only are we looking at kind of a new era in open bodybuilding, but who is going to be the standard bearer? Who's going to set that standard for Classic going forward after Chris Bumstead? Mike has a crazy impressive physique. As far as his taper, honestly, one of the craziest lat to waist ratios in Classic. His lats are insanely wide. He's got a really impressive physique. But will he be the next Classic Physique Olympia champ? Because on paper, he's the guy to do it. But really, the only thing that has changed in Classic Physique during Chris's reign is who the next guy is. That number 2 position has changed pretty frequently. And all these physiques are pretty different. I mean, Ramon Dino, Breon Ainsley, Terrence Ruffin, Mike Sommerfeld. And I should mention that Terrence is going to be back in 2025. Will Terrence find himself back on top? He wasn't even at this Olympia. And I think realistically, Chris has the biggest shoes to fill of any recent Olympia champion from either open bodybuilding or Classic Physique, because he won the most Classic Physique titles and he's won the most Olympia titles, period, since Phil Heath. And I think that's going to be really entertaining to see is what will the next standard in Classic be? Or will it be something where it changes every year now that Chris is gone? Maybe the standard changes a little bit. The physique that wins is totally different. Will the Classic Physique Olympia title have kind of a similar period of time that open bodybuilding did? When Phil left after being on top for so many years, we've seen a lot of different physiques win that open Olympia title from, Sean Roden, Brandon Curry, Big Ramy, Hadi Chupin, Samson Dowda, Derek Lunsford. Will we see something similar happen in Classic Physique where it's a different guy every year for the better part of a decade? Or, as we're looking at this update from Mike Sommerfeld, is Mike going to be the guy that steps up to the plate and he's going to be a multi-time Classic Physique champion, and he is the guy that's next in line? It just seems like it's been so quickly that the bodybuilding world moved on from Ramon Dino as being the next in line to now it's Mike. But it used to be Rough Diesel. It used to be Breon. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about the future of the Classic Physique title. Do you think Mike is the next guy to win the Classic Physique Olympia, or do you think that position will continue to change? And all these guys, it could be any of these guys. It could be Ramon still. It could be Terrence. It could be Urs. Do you think it's a lock for Mike Sommerfeld, or do you think it's kind of a coin toss between all those top guys? And which of those Classic Physiques do you feel like could be the new standard? And I think, a guy like Mike that has a good amount of muscle, he's dense, he's got an insane V-taper, his proportions are crazy. That could be the standard. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, it's been kind of slow this week in bodybuilding now that the 2024 season ended with the Big Man Weekend, but the Arnold Classic is essentially right around the corner, and I think we're going to get that Arnold Classic competitor list very, very soon. So we're going to have that to talk about, and I'm sure we're going to start seeing physique updates from the guys that are on that list. And maybe some of the guys that we talked about in this video end up being on that list. Maybe Neckzilla does get the invite. Maybe Nick Walker's on that list. Because keep in mind, it is going to be the highest prize money in Arnold Classic history. $500,000 for first place. I have a feeling a lot of guys are going to show up for that. Even though it's an invitation, you can submit a request to be invited. And I'm sure a lot of the top guys have done that. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, click the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.